So now that we're past those injuries, let's get into the game recaps. I'm not going to recap every single game this week. On this podcast, that is. There's going to be 4 games I don't recap today. And those 4 games, I'll give you the names, or you'll pretty much realize it anyways. You can look in the description if you really want to know. But those 4 games I won't recap because they were kind of boring, not really a big time matchup. There isn't a whole ton to talk about in those games, so I won't cover them. The games with a lot of injuries, the games where it was close, where there's a lot to talk about, a lot at stake, I'll talk about those this week. But in the end, I will post all of the recaps on YouTube. So if your team isn't on this podcast and you were hoping they would be, check out the YouTube page and you'll find them there by midday Wednesday. Now, first off, let's look at the Thursday night matchup between the Bengals and the Browns. One hell of a game. And quite honestly, I'd call it the best game of the season up to this point if it weren't for the Seahawks-Pats game and the Falcons-Cowboys game. Joe Burrow was, how do I put it, not just impressive, but outright great. Especially for his age. Burrow made a number of great reads, often reading the blitz and still working through 2 to 3 reads. And when they weren't blitzing, Burrow often found the open man almost every single time. Burrow, while he made some rookie mistakes, it's his second career start, looked incredibly sharp and decisive even despite facing a 16 to 28 point deficit. He was simply incredible in my eyes, and in my eyes, yes, I'm seeing all of this in a relative point of view. But even outside of that relative, he's a rookie, this is really good for a rookie mindset, he still looked incredible. If you throw that away and think of him as a third-year quarterback, he threw for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 picks after being asked to throw 61 times. That's still great. And then you go back to that relative mindset, which is the mindset you should have because it's true. When you ask your rookie quarterback to throw 61 times in just his second career game, and he doesn't throw a single pick, along with 3 touchdowns and 300 yards, you've got your man. And when I watched the game on Thursday, I wasn't just impressed. In fact, I believed. Again, the stats are great, but it goes beyond that. Burrow has faced adversity, including getting pressured a lot on Thursday night, and has shown that despite a handful of rookie mistakes, he's been the man for the Bengals. He's carried that offense. Now, on the flip side, there were some negatives for the Bengals in Week 2. First off, they lost. But was that necessarily unexpected? The Bengals fans aren't pushing for a playoff berth in 2020. They're pushing for a berth of a new age in Cincinnati that is going to be led by Burrow in future years. I don't think anyone was expecting the Bengals to make a push for the playoffs this year, and I still don't think they will. But hey, if Joe Burrow can keep playing like this, you never know. Now, along with this, the Bengals struggled to protect Burrow, as I said earlier. It wasn't as much the Browns' D-line as it seemed to be the Bengals' O-line just falling asleep play after play. Burrow basically got bullied by his own O-line. Every other play reminded me of a scene from Adam Sandler's The Yard, the movie where he portrays an NFL quarterback sent to prison and co-stars with Chris Rock as he builds a football team in the prison system. And the scene I'm thinking of is when the O-line just stands up and lets everyone through simply to punish Adam Sandler for trying to throw the game. Now, granted, the O-line of the Bengals should be thanking Joe Burrow for putting on a show on Thursday night, but in my eyes, if that's what they were trying to do, they did a terrible job showing it. Overall, though, the Bengals looked impressive for the Bengals. They weren't playing a superstar team, but they weren't playing against a dumpster fire of a team either. Joe Burrow looked good, and honestly, this season, up to this point, there aren't that many dumpster fire of a teams as we usually see. Pretty much every team up to this point has showed signs of ability to compete. Even the Eagles, who right now are playing pretty terrible offensively and defensively, honestly. So, we expected the Washington football team to be, next to a dumpster fire team, and they won a game. They're playing relatively competitive. They're moving the ball. Dwayne Haskins is playing better than expected. The Bengals were kind of expected to be one of those teams, and they've played relatively well. The Dolphins were expected to be that. They've played relatively well. They just only lost by 3 to the Bills, and the only game that they really got pummeled was against one of the best, if not the best, secondary in the league with Fitzmagic, which is kind of expected. So the Dolphins aren't necessarily a dumpster fire of a team right now. They're competing. They competed against the Bills, 28-31 this Sunday. So, again, Joe Burrow looked good, and the Bengals, along with their fans, should be pumped for the future. They weren't playing a dumpster fire of a team. They were playing a solid team in the Browns, a solid roster, and they competed big time. 35-30, Joe Burrow looked next to great, next to perfect, honestly. It's a stretch to say he's perfect, but he played perfect for a rookie quarterback in his second start. Honestly, I think that is above any ceiling I would have expected for that game. It's really surprising overall, really, to see the Bengals ask Joe Burrow to throw it 61 times in a game. I mean, how often do you see a team ask a quarterback to throw 61 times in just his second career start? You're asking for trouble there. But apparently, Cincinnati liked what they saw with Burrow, and they trusted him doing that. And honestly, as the game went on, it wasn't one of those scenarios where you could really tell how many throws Burrow was making. It didn't look like they were just throwing incompletion after incompletion, and the run was just getting stuffed and stuffed. It wasn't necessarily that. It was more that Burrow was connecting on his throws. But a lot of them were, those 3 to 5 yard plays, and they add up after a long time, especially considering how many long drives Burrow put up. So I don't think they went into this game thinking Burrow was going to throw it 61 times. I just think that as the game evolved, as the game went on, Burrow was hitting these throws to these receivers. The Browns weren't finding ways to shut down these short routes, and the Bengals feasted on it. They put up 30 points. So, again, Joe Burrow looked good, and the Bengals, along with their fans, should be pumped for the future. I'm pumped for Joe Burrow. I'm pumped for this team. I said before the season that Joe Burrow had a 60% chance of being a bust considering he was on the Bengals, 40% chance of having a Peyton Manning-type career, and honestly, I'm leaning more towards, 45-55. It's getting closer. Now, after 2 games, I'm not going to jump the gun and say I'm going to lay the odds for Burrow to have a Peyton Manning-like career, but hey, his first 2 games have shown that he is probably not going to be a bust if he can replicate this performance well into the future. Now, on the other hand, let's look at the Cleveland Browns. The Browns didn't disappoint. They found rhythm both through the air and on the ground, and quite honestly, I'd say the Browns were at their best I've ever seen them live. You got to remember, this Thursday night game was one hell of a game to watch. Both offenses looked great. The Browns' run game was next to impossible to stop. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt combined for over 200 yards collectively, creating 2 strong ground threats that the Bengals just couldn't seem to find an answer for. The pass game was also impressive as Baker Mayfield played relatively well, especially in comparison to Week 1, with 219 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Granted, nowhere near Burrow's performance, but good nonetheless, especially considering how focused the Browns were on the ground attack rather than the air raid offense. Now, Chubb was far and away the front runner in the Browns running back duo, with more carries and over 40 more yards, along with 2 touchdowns compared to Hunt's 1. And Chubb showed more fight than Hunt in terms of yards after contact, constantly fighting for the extra couple of yards on every carry. Mayfield and Odell Beckham connected for a deep touchdown pass relatively early, which is good considering recent trade rumors stating that Beckham was being shopped by the Browns. And Odell ended the day with 4 catches for 74 yards and a touchdown, leading the team in receiving yards. So it kind of looks like Odell's not going to be traded anytime soon. And honestly, I wasn't buying those trade rumors right off the bat anyways. I mean, you can pretty much mark it on your calendar that every season at least once there's going to be rumors that Odell Beckham is going to get traded out of Cleveland. I mean, it's always going to be there, and this year it was again. I don't think he's getting traded, especially after last Thursday. Now, Mayfield looked best on play action, and it wasn't close in terms of his performance in other sets. Mayfield went 4 for 5 for 87 yards and a touchdown out of play action. Surprisingly, though, the Browns seemed to abandon this set later on in the game, though I'm not sure why. I hope the Browns rely on this, especially considering their 2 running backs are performing well, as I really feel like it could open up this offense against tougher teams. Baker Mayfield has proved on several occasions that play-action throwing offense is where he performs best, and I really hope that the Browns, now that they especially have 2 great running threats, start to attack that more. It works for them. They've got to attack it more.